Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I hope everybody's had a wonderful weekend. We're going to do another episode of Brian and Janice here with our Facebook Live and YouTube show. So hopefully everybody can view us right now. We are ready to start the show. I just want to congratulate everybody on praying that everybody's had a wonderful year. We're about to encounter the end of this year, and we need to look forward to what we're going to be blessed with the following year. But first, we need to bless others. How can you always expect to receive the goodness of your Creator and the goodness of God if you have not put that out there? So whether it's in word, in kind deed, or whatever, you really need to seek in your heart to try to do something good for mankind. This segment, we're going to feature Brian talking about the first chapter of the book. And if you have not purchased the book, I will show you that at the end of this segment or during this segment so that you can get this book. And also, I would like to encourage you all to follow through with this video, share with as many people as you can, and just encourage them to tune in, listen, take notes. Brian's done a lot of research in this show, for these shows, and I would just love for everybody to get the knowledge that I've gained from this. It has really helped me a lot, both spiritually, mentally, physically, and financially in all those areas of my life. So in saying no more, I would like to get Brian started on talking about his book.
Good evening again, Facebook family. Good evening, YouTube family. We are glad to be back with you all on this beautiful Sunday evening. So we're going to kind of dive into conversation. So I'll go ahead and show the book again. Where do Black people go from here? A practical guide to survival in the 21st century. We know that Dr. King also wrote a book called Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community. So kind of piggybacking off of that concept as it relates to where we are now as Black people existing in this country called America, and what we need to do to continue to advance ourselves beyond the civil rights struggle is that's our mission. And I think that's our challenge as well. So as we kind of dive into this, Janice will maybe ask some questions. She's kind of following you all on her phone. So if you all have any questions, we'll kind of, we'll dive into some of those questions if you may have them. But I want to highlight the first chapter of the book called The Ruins of Black People. And basically what we discuss in the first chapter of the book is understanding what happened to Black people. What was it that caused us to actually be in the state that we're in right now? So historically, we could point to several things. I won't go through all of them. Number one thing that you're always going to hear as it relates to the state of Black people and why we are in the shape that we're in is you're always going to hear the argument of slavery. So the condition that slavery produced amongst Black people is still very, very prevalent. I don't care what anybody say. I don't care what people tell you. You need to understand that the majority, I'm going to say 75% of African American problems today is indirectly due to slavery. So we still deal with wealth disparity. We still deal with education disparity. We still deal with health disparity. All three of those things can be directly pointed to slavery. So regardless of what the government says, regardless of what other folks that are not of the same ethnic background as you may say, you need to understand that majority of the problems that we deal with today indirectly comes from our ancestors being enslaved in this country, forced to work for free without any benefits after emancipation. So the 40 acres and a mule, we never received. So we're still fighting for the whole concept of liberation. And when you understand liberation, a people cannot be liberated without having something at their disposal that they can call their own. Okay? So when you look at, and let's go back in history again, when we look at the whole concept of the revolution and taxation on certain goods and products by the king, we see that caused patriots in the 13 colonies to say, no, we will not accept this new taxation. If we accept this new taxation, then it's going to limit us to what we can do as far as our own land. It's going to limit us as it relates to what we can do concerning buying and trading, import, exporting. So we won't tolerate this new tax. Based on that, we deem it necessary to go to war to fight for our freedom so that we can have what we need at our disposal to function as a colony at that time. So hey, nothing has changed. If you look at it as it relates to black people today, we need the same thing. When you don't have any liquid assets at your disposal, then you're at a disadvantage. So when I say liquid assets are immediate assets that you can say that you own, that can actually produce some sort of income. It can actually act as collateral. So liquid assets is something that you own, that's at your disposal, that can be used for your benefit and your interest. If you do not have that, then it is very difficult to say that you are functional as it relates to how society works. So we are still fighting that fight. We're still fighting the fight of liberation. It's very difficult to say that you're liberated when you really don't have anything at your disposal that you can use to benefit the interest of your people. So we are in this battle, and we can't turn back. We got to continue to advance ourselves. Like I said, Dr. King's book, Where Do Black People Go From Here? Or Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community. He highlights some of the same problems back in the 60s that we're dealing with still today. In his book, he talks about part of the solution for black people is those that are considered to be the talent 10, often referred to as the divine 9 for those that are familiar with that term, that the talent 10 would come back and would be the catalyst to drive implementing solutions into the community, bringing back finances into the community so that we could deal with the wealth gap and the wealth disparity between, watch this now, between not blacks and whites, but between blacks that were more influential and that were more privileged, if I could use that word, for a black person, than the poor blacks that were relegated due to their circumstances to a poverty condition or a poverty situation or put in a poverty environment and could not or did not have the same privileges, did not have the same opportunities. Hopefully, the concept is that hopefully these groups would invest back into their community and lift their community up financially. Now we know that that's still a challenge as we move forward in the 21st century. And I could say a lot about the divine 9, but We may discuss that in another show. I may have to do a whole show just on the history of the Divine Nine, talk about that, break it down, talk about the whole social concept in the development of most of those fraternities and sororities, why they exist, why black people felt it necessary to even participate in the whole Greek concept of educational life as it relates to universities. And the funny thing is that when you look at history, the Greeks actually came to Africa to be actually initiated into our fraternities. So, and I think here's the irony. In reverse order, when we go off to college, we have adopted their system or organization of what fraternity is, not understanding that they got the whole concept from Africa. So when you have the Pythagoras, when you have the Plato, when you have the Aristotle, all of those men had to come one way to receive their education, and that was into Egypt by way of, and I say by way of Timbuktu, in the great universities there, into Egypt, Luxor, and to study in the schools of mystery, and to study in the schools of sociology, all of these different factions that we know now that most Europeans covet as it relates to education was once studied based off of African concepts and off of being initiated into African fraternities, or what we call fraternities or sororities. Okay, so that's a whole nother show.
Yes.
But anyway, like I said, we do want to talk about the book, and we do want to deal with, what caused us to be in this state in the first chapter, and I deal with some elementary things that actually, helps us to understand why we are in the position that we're in right now.
I have a question, Brian, and I think, and this is just my view from talking to other people, I think people are looking for a solution, some form of solution now. What is it that we can do now? We trying to understand why we got there. Yes, you got to know how did you get here before you can correct the problem. Because if you don't make a decision on what to do to correct the problem or understand how we got here, then you can't fix the problem.
Absolutely.
So my question is, where are we now as a people, number one? And number two, what are some immediate things that we as a people can do to try to bring us back together and to help our people? Because a lot of people say, look, I worked hard all my life, and I'm one of those 30 plus years of working. A lot of people feel that way. I've raised my children, I raised my family, I've done okay, I've done well. I have my home, I have my transportation. We're not struggling. We're not, by no means am I where I used to be. So why would I invest everything I have or any portion of me into helping somebody else when really nobody really helped me other than my parents, and they may be deceased now, or if they're not, you think about those things. How can I preserve what I got? If I want to help somebody else, I may lose some of what I have. And that's a concern where you got a group of people over here that just act like they don't even want to do anything to get it right. They don't even want to help themselves. So what do we do?
Okay, so let's identify, I think what we have to do first is let's identify some problems in our community that we have to deal with immediately. Okay. That our people are struggling from, and it seems like each year the situation gets a little worse. Okay, so if you go to the Brookings Institute actually identifies 6 problems that Black people are in immediate need of as it relates to resources in the political arena, as it relates to policies being written, okay, things of that nature. So let's identify those problems. The first problem that we need to identify that I'm gonna say is probably gonna be number one in my book is unemployment and opportunities, okay, in the same breath. So we don't separate those. When the United States gives us the unemployment rate, which they often talk about,
I saw it today.
They do not include those that are currently unemployed. They do not include those that work for employment agencies, i.e. temporary services. Okay. They do not include those that are only employed part-time. Do you understand? So there are so many things that are not included in that unemployment rate that causes the number to be elevated more than what it actually is. So, I'm sorry, not elevated, but less than what it actually is.
Less than, yes.
Okay, that we are dealing with in the African community as it relates to unemployment rates. We are above 30% in the African American community. That's number one. Jobs are not there, regardless of what they say. The jobs that African people normally get are now being given to, or are now being taken, if I could say that, if I could use that word, by others that are actually coming into the country, okay, be it immigrants that are coming into the country, that are getting those jobs that normally African Americans would get.
You know, I want to interject right there.
Okay.
One thing I want to bring some light to, I noticed, you know, we, being in a lot of different fields, people realize you have to have supplies. And when you call the customer support numbers for supplies, or if you got a cell phone and you're calling to correct what's going on with your phone, and you get customer service or customer support, you speak to someone in another country that's not, well, I'm not going to say they're in another country, they're from another country, because sometimes you have to say, wait a minute, slow down, can you get somebody else to help me? I'm not understanding you. So I've noticed that a lot, because those jobs were once held by us, a lot of us in customer service.
Okay, so let's look at this, sweetie. All right, now take that book with the analogy that you just gave, okay, as it relates to calling and getting a customer service representative that is actually in a foreign country, helping you as it relates to whatever problem it may be, whether it's as it relates to how your computer is set up, it may be your cable is not working properly, it may be your cell phone's gone out, it could be a number of things, okay? But let's use that. And you have a problem because they don't speak fluent English.
Right.
Okay? Yeah. So now, let's take that theory. Let's look at it. If you have someone, African American descent, but is poorly educated and cannot properly enunciate or pronunciate, okay, certain words, or cannot properly dialogue with someone on the other end in reference to finding out the problem so they can give them instructions as it relates to the solution.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
So, and we have to be careful as African people, because we have to understand that this country would prefer, first, and then you've got to look at this, cheap labor, okay? The cost to employ those people that cannot speak good English, okay, and speak a broken English, just like our brothers and sisters in the project may speak a broken English, but they refuse to hire them.
Yes.
You understand? Because they will have to pay them a little bit more. They go outside the country and hire another group that cannot speak proper English, but yet, watch this now, but yet that particular group has more education than our brothers and sisters that are actually in the projects. You understand?
Yeah.
So why? Because those countries focuses on educating a working class base in their society. Okay? They believe in strengthening their society, their country, their nation, and they believe that education is the means by which you do that. So they put an emphasis on it. So you may have a person on the other line that speaks broken English, but that person also speaks 2 or 3 other different languages.
Okay.
And can communicate with more than just you who speak English. Okay? They may speak a little bit of Spanish. They may speak, you understand what I'm saying? A little bit of Mandarin. Okay? So they may speak some of those other languages that are now becoming more prevalent in the U.S. than you do. So the whole concept of a company putting their resources, they're paying less, they're employing a group whose attention by their country has been put on education to educate that group so that they could be the labor force for that nation. That way, money stays within that nation. The young people are not leaving that nation. The young people are being employed by U.S. corporations. They get a chance to stay at home, make a decent living, continue to further their education based off of those companies' educational program. You understand? And so now you've got, like I said, with African Americans, you've got a whole group and a whole generation coming up that cannot get a job because of situations like that. Now that's just one example. Okay? The second elephant in the room outside of employment and employment opportunities is education. The public school system is being dismantled purposely by the United States government. Hear me, family. Okay? The United States government wants the whole concept of divide and conquer is still being used as it relates to educating African Americans. Understand that. I could go on for a whole hour about the Dion situation, but I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to get started on it.
No.
But it's an example almost of what I'm referring to as it relates to the divide and conquer theory that's being implemented within our system of education. See, we have to understand that historically, public schools were created to educate those who were formerly enslaved, descendants of those who were formerly enslaved, correct? Okay, so when we see that, when we understand that, we should understand that if, in order not to educate black people, prior to this system existing, understanding why the system came into existence, the best way to not educate black people is to undo what you did to educate them. Okay, so it's not difficult. How do you do that? Okay, when integration began in the mid-50s, early 60s into the school systems, Europeans at that time began to develop what we know today as private schools. In those private schools, and prior to the federal government stepping in, those private schools could receive state funding. When they initially started, Private institutions were not funded by parents paying tuition for their child to go to the institution. It was funded by monies being redirected from state governments to those white private institutions taken out of the public schools, because the public schools were now being infiltrated with African American people. Okay? So what the state government did, it says, okay, we'll let them have the public schools and we'll create our own institutions. If they're fighting so to integrate with us into the public school system, let them have it. We'll redirect the resources to the white private institutions. The federal government had to step in and actually stop resources and funding going to white institutions that decided we don't want to sit next to a little colored child, okay, if we're going to create our own too. So the federal government had to actually step in, create a bill to actually stop that. Okay, so when we look at that, the whole creation now, family, of charter schools, I'm not a fan of charter schools. I think it's the divide and conquer theory when you look at not only charter school institutions, but you look at magnet school institutions. Magnet schools are institutions where you have your most gifted, the most talented, intellectually to be participants in that particular school system. Charter schools are no more than they are just a little bit above public institutions, but some charter schools, though, are worse than public school institutions. So now charter schools are becoming the same as public schools. They are holding cells, prison to their education to prison pipeline type institutions.
And you really believe that,
and it's true. We can go right down the street to Montgomery and look at several of those academies. But kudos to the Brock brothers who have created Valiant Cross.
Yes.
They are doing wonderful. But it's because their focus and attention was on creating intellectuals. Prior to the sports, which now they just started incorporating sports.
They did.
But the number one agenda for their program is being able to educate black children.
Black young men.
Young men.
Yes.
Okay? So, and I think that's brilliant. We need to get back to that. We see some of that in our northern states and in cities like Chicago, where the Nation of Islam have separate institutions of learning for our young men and the young women.
So, what are some examples are we seeing that coming out of these charter schools or going into these charter schools? What is that about?
You got any questions? Okay, good. So I'm sorry, what you asking?
So what are some of the examples of what are we seeing going into the who are the people that are going in? Why are they going to the charter schools and leaving the public schools?
Well, there's this whole concept in theory that charter schools are better than public schools. Okay, so what the government did was develop a concept called school of choice. Okay, school of choice was no more than a trick for black people to redirect funding. That's what school of choice was really about. Okay, most of your charter schools are still owned by or started by Europeans.
Okay.
Okay, they make up the board, majority of the boards. Okay, and so school of choice, the whole concept of school of choice was to redirect our children, to give them multiple outlets as far as, or either multiple, choices.
Because they're just not getting any better education in the charter schools.
They're not getting any better. And now a lot of parents are seeing that.
Yes.
That, hey, I took my child, I'm sacrificing, I'm having to drive them to school because buses don't run for charter schools. So I'm having to take them to school, pick them up, I'm having to, if they want to be engaged in anything, I'm having to do that. In this school, as far as their curriculum and as far as their school, I'm no better than the public school that they took their child out of, thinking that if they put them in this charter school, they were going to have a better education, when they come to find out that the education in some cases is much worse, depending on who is over the charter school. Okay, so if you got a white supremacist over the charter school and they say, well, we're not going to teach any type of African history in American history, we're going to delete the African portion of American history. We're going to take that out. How do you teach American history without including those who were the most instrumental in building the country? So we have to be, like I said, there again, as black people, we have to begin to create our own institutions, like a Valiant Cross, and we have to demand excellence. We have to get back to some old foundational principles. Instead of complaining about how hard the lesson plan is for your child, why don't we sit down with our child? Everybody got Google now. Google, Google, Google. Okay? Professor Google can at least help you with some foundational instructions. It doesn't matter what it is, but you can sit down and say, baby, well, let's go to Professor Google. We're going to the University of Google tonight. This is what we're going to do. We have to offset our children and stop saying that our children can't learn. See, there again, we bought into a false theory of being inferior when it comes to being intellectual. Stop putting your children in football, basketball. Now we're going to transition to soccer. We got them in everything, but they cannot read a Dr. Seuss book. And they're in the 6th grade. I don't care if little Johnny can play football. If he cannot read, and my whole thing, I think sports in the next 30 years is going to be drastically different. Black people are slowly going to be weeded out of that, because it's a known fact now that athletes, which are majority African American in certain sports, they don't want them being paid that much. It is a matter of time before that pie is gone. And if our children cannot compete intellectually, they are going to continue. And I mean, it's already, we've been, because of it, I said this on the last show. Yes. We're going back to the old concept of slavery. Do not teach them how to read. Do not teach them how to write.
Wow.
Okay, so it's going back to that. If anything, the only thing they are good for is entertainment, okay, singing, dancing, throwing a ball. If that is the concept, then we can easily weed them out of society. Athletes do not make up 1% of our population as it relates to those that have that opportunity that go on to play professional sports. So we've got to get back to making sure that our children can be competitive in a society that is now focusing again on, and which has always been focused, but now I think our government realized you cannot have a working base, be it labor base, because now everything is going to automation. Yes. So even your labor class, to operate on a factory assembly line, you've got to know some basic computer literacy. You've got to be, at least knowledgeable of how to navigate a computer program.
But Brian, they're saying now that these kids are very smart when it comes to technology. They can do that. They can navigate through just about anything. They know how to.
They navigate through Facebook, social media, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. That's about it. That's it, and that's a shame. Now, they can get on their phones and they can go to Facebook, they can sing all the rap songs, they can go to TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. You tell them to go to the periodic table or give me, go to your multiplication table of 3s or 4s or 6s. They have no clue on what you're talking about. But if you tell them, go to TikTok, baby, I want you to make a TikTok video. So they can navigate through that. So nobody cares about TikTok that is serious about educating their children. Let me say that again. Brothers and sisters, China has in place a TikTok law. Here is the owners of TikTok now. That TikTok law, do you know what it says? Tell the audience what it says.
They have a time frame as when they can get on, their children can get on TikTok. During the week, during the school week, they are not allowed to be on TikTok. Am I right?
Yeah, not only that's secondary to the main thing that
it's
they have.
It's the amount of time that they can be on TikTok.
Yeah, but that's still secondary.
Uh-oh.
You're not giving them the primary. Okay? So when you look at it, the primary, China's TikTok law, so to speak, states, family, that when children make TikTok videos, outside of, yes, the time limit that Janice talked about, that is true, but the basics of their TikTok law stipulates that their children cannot go on there and create any videos that are not videos pertaining to education, that pertains to how to build. If it doesn't pertain to how to build or make the society better, they cannot go on TikTok and make videos. The videos that they produce have to be educational.
Wow.
Educational. And that's important because we don't do that. You know, we go on TikTok and our children go on TikTok and they're doing the latest chip challenge. What all they doing on TikTok? They're doing the what do they call that? The Beyonce dance.
Yes.
You know, of course we got, the bourgeois, they got to do the dance too now. Everybody doing the Beyonce dance, doing the dip in the kitchen, whatever it is, But see, China focuses on their children putting something on there that is productive, that the society can learn from, can grow from. You understand? So we've got to become, we have to develop a knowledge base that goes beyond just being able to toggle through social media.
Yes.
You know?
And we got some good comments, Brian. We have Dr. Tanya Chestnut is on, who is a state board. She's on the State Board of Education.
Awesome.
We would love to hear from her. In fact, we would love to have her on the show, wouldn't we, Brian?
That would be beautiful.
That would be wonderful, Tanya.
We could have a great conversation.
We thank you. And we have Miranda Posey.
Awesome.
Thank you, Miranda. And Miranda's saying they can't navigate and they don't understand the real technology. So she's saying they don't understand the real technology of it, but they know how to get on there and do simple tasks that are not allowing people to be knowledgeable, be educated, or to learn. We have Cynthia West here. We have Denise Dukes. Denise had an awesome comment. She said, really can't see it, but she's saying, because we know as a race we need some ideas for the direction that our children or that our world is going in today. So we have lost that. We have lost.
We have lost that, and we need to be focusing on coding, programming. We need to be developing ITS programs that our children can participate in, even if we have to do it in a home. Guys, listen. Something that I'm a proponent of, and something that I'm really passionate about. You do not have to have a nonprofit in order to affect your community. This is also something that was purposely put in place to be a detractor in the African American community. The creation of nonprofit organizations were created to keep African people from coming together and, watch this now, organizing as a collective and doing something as a whole group to affect their community. Nonprofits were put in place to continue to promote the concept of handouts or entitlements. Nonprofits were not created to be a true benefit to those that were poor and downtrodden. They were created as detractors. They were created as distractions. They were put in place as a way to money launder through rich corporations down to philanthropists that were millionaires that would give pennies to groups like that focus on certain other issues within the community. They were not created, family, to actually deal with our problems as a whole collective people. So that's why when you see nonprofits, you see what I call the parceling out of a lot of these nonprofit organizations. A perfect example, we're here at Christmas time now, and you see a lot of nonprofit organizations, that are instrumental in giving out toys and gifts for our children.
Oh, yes.
Feeding those that are in need,
families, yes.
Things like that.
Yes.
But if you notice, the concentration always tends to tilt toward the African American community. Okay, so what does that say? That says that these people, or this particular group, is still the most disadvantaged group in America. Okay, so we have an entitlement program in place to make them at certain times of the year, okay, to say that we have been instrumental in furthering the cause and helping them to come up, when literally, I shared this with Janice today. I said, literally, those programs hurt us more than help us. Why do you say that, Brian? Because after the holiday, now your child that got multiple gifts from multiple organizations, or the family that was fed at Christmas time, now feels like they're entitled, so to speak. That, once a year or twice a year or 3 times a year, how many other times a year, we can wait and depend on. We don't have to get out there and do for ourselves as much, because we know that there are other organizations that will step in and do for us. Not understanding that you don't see not even 0.25% of those funds that are money laundered through nonprofit organizations by rich billionaire philanthropists. We don't see it. We don't see half of the money that is actually set aside through government grant programs that are coming into those nonprofit organizations. Most of that money is filtered out through nonprofit execs. Most of that money never gets to the community, or is filtered through nonprofit organizations that are run by the government, like the United Way, Red Cross. You see the CEO of Red Cross make $500,000 a year. What's going to the people? We have to be realistic about what actually is taking place. So in our community, my brothers and sisters, we are still dealing with the rudiments of what was set in place. That's why you see the condition of our people, and I talk about that in the first chapter of the book. So we're still on the first chapter. I talk about all of these things, the ruins of our people. I talk about the deception that was used to actually get us to believe. Let me just kind of define deception out of the book context. I talk about the deception that was used in the actual word deception. I break that down to help us understand that deception for them is different from what we understand as deception. So deception was Europeans using a concept to gain advantage over those who are different from them. They used whatever tools that were necessary, whether it was education, whether it was labor.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying? They used everything they had at their disposal. There again, we talked about disposal.
That's right.
You gotta have something at your disposal. They used everything at their disposal to make us feel that, or to make us feel lesser than. Okay? They used everything at their disposal to gain advantage over us. Okay?
That's right.
So, and we're still experiencing that today. That's one of the rudiments that we suffer from today. We are still experiencing, whether it be on a political level, okay, whether it be on an intellectual level. It doesn't matter what level we're dealing with, whether it's on a financial level. They use everything at their disposal, okay, to still have an advantage over us. Therefore, that's why you see, and I often say this, we get on this Democratic, Republican kick. And I often say there's no difference between a Democrat and a Republican.
Right.
One deals with trickle-down economics. The other one deals with trickle-up economics. So I often use the analysis of if a man has a bicycle and he gets hit by a car and nothing happens to the bicycle, the Republican way of helping him is by coming along, taking the bike that had no damage to it, and leaving a sheet behind to cover up his body if he's dead.
Right.
The Democrats' philosophy on helping him is by coming along, calling an ambulance, taking the sheet that the Republicans left off of him, if it's bloody, replacing the bloody sheet, put him in the ambulance, and then let him go by way of ambulance and send him a bill for the sheet and the ambulance. So there is literally there is no difference between the two groups. And that is why we can get on, I understand a lot of us vote because of, symbolic reasons, okay? When we talk about our vote making a difference, yes, a vote can make a difference. I don't discourage voting. I'm an avid voter. I believe in the political process of voting. But we have to understand, we got to go beyond a vote. Because, see, a vote is not going to go into the projects and deal with the brothers and sisters in the project. A vote doesn't do that. You understand? A vote is not going to go into the projects and educate them. A vote is not going to go into the project and clothe them. A vote is not going to go into the project and pay their bills. A vote is not going to go into the project and help them to understand the actual process that we're calling for them to participate in. A vote doesn't do that. We have to do that. So at some point, we got to recognize, brothers and sisters, as important as that is, we got to go beyond that. We can't stop at that now. Okay? We're in a different generation where we're dealing with a different type of politics that's being deployed. And that politics that's being deployed now is to continue to make black people in the next 10 to 20 years non-existent. It is slowly creating a different dynamic as it relates to what is referred to as black people. That term black or African is going away, and the substitution for that is brown, yellow, red, what other color? Or if you want to go to ethnicity, Asian, Indian, okay, Polynesian, So, and all of those are brown group, will fall into the brown category.
Yes.
Okay, so you're not going to hear the terminology used as it refers to those who are descendants of slaves. You're not going to use that, you're not going to hear that terminology anymore, because there are not going to be any descendants of slaves left around to actually fall into that category. So if a young African American woman marries a European male, then they are going to be classified as a brown family, not a black family. Do you understand? So there are so many tricks that are being put out there now to continue to minimize. Yes, that's what we.
It's deception.
It is deception, and it is to gain advantage. Deception was always used to gain advantage over a different group. It was always used to keep a different group down. It was deployed. It was a actual political tool that was put in place in the early 60s as it relates to how do we keep this group in our control and doing what we allow them to do.
And you know, Brian,
okay?
we can take it another step further. You have, when you are educated or when you are able to present, if you have a gift, a great skill, okay? Whether it's in football or you could be an athlete, but there's nothing wrong with being an intelligent athlete.
I agree with that.
You know, and I don't want anybody to think we're putting that down, because we're not. That's not what we're doing. We are trying to get our people to understand, and as a grandmother now, we want to encourage our grandchildren and our children and their children to focus on education. Get that root knowledge so you can get out there and you can compete with the best of them. Because at the end of the day, people are actually suing big corporations when they find out that another person of another ethnicity came and received a job or a certain amount of money more than they did, and they were more educated or just as much as educated as the other party. So you got to look at that. You have grounds when you are educated. You can fight and defend for yourself. I tell Brian.
But you have grounds when you're uneducated. You just don't know what grounds to trade at. See, so
well,
the
then
difference
that's lack
between
of knowledge, so you don't know.
But there are educated people that are not legally astute. So
right.
See, the difference between an educated Negro and an uneducated Negro.
You know, we don't use that term much, Brian.
But it's,
Negro.
well, we are Negroes. So I can argue that all day long on another show. Okay. So we're getting into Spanish words.
Okay.
You know, the word Negro comes from the Spanish word.
Okay, I can give you an example to make it quick for
so,
you.
You're not black. Okay.
Brian, you're educated. Okay.
Yes,
you're educated, but you're not educated in you weren't educated in law. But you have researched enough and read enough and studied enough about law that you can actually represent yourself just about as well as any attorney. Yeah. And there's a lot of people out there like that. I'm a nurse. I was educated in healthcare, and there's not much I don't know about the health and well-being of the human body. But don't put me in a courtroom and think I can defend myself, or don't put me on laws pertaining to insurance and things of that nature. I can read that all day, and once I read it, I understand it. But what I was saying is try to get people educated enough, our children, so that they can read and they can themselves prepare a better life for themselves. That was what I was trying to make.
I understand the premises of what you're saying. Okay, so and I agree with. We need to put our kids in position to be competitive.
Yes. As
it relates to how society is being shaped today. So there's a reason STEM is in place. So you really started hearing about 10 years ago,
STEM,
the whole concept of STEM being the main curriculum now for our children. Okay, so I remember when I was coming up, and we got to end, guys. I think we're over the hour.
Okay, we got to
Yeah, we got to. So, but anyway, just to give this short, I remember when the basic courses was spelling, reading, math, social studies.
English, math, social study, and science.
Okay,
those were the
those were the four. Those were the four. Okay,
Yeah.
and then you incorporated spelling and reading. That was incorporated in the English class.
And the writing.
And the writing and all of those things. Now, it's because courses are more geared towards STEMs, it's programming.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's coding.
Yes.
It's your upper level maths.
Yes.
Calculus.
Yes. Trig.
Stat.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? I love stat. Data analysis.
Yes. Yes.
All of those love that. So what we have to do is direct our kids towards those things. Now, trade is still there.
Yes, it is. And it's very vital.
And trade is always going to do well. But the child has to now know how to operate a computer in order to run the machinery.
And be able to read so you can understand how to operate.
That's exactly right. So there are some basic things that we still have to know that we are forsaking, I believe.
Yes.
It is my
As
opinion.
it relates to our children.
Yes, that we are forgetting what, buttered both sides of the bread for us. You understand what I'm saying? And if you're going to keep up with society and follow the trend of society, you've got to know how to maneuver within your social, group.
Yes.
And within your people group.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying? You have to know what works best for your people, how your children learn. You cannot base how the Asian child learned and put a curriculum in place for your child based on how the Asian child learned or how the Indian child learned or how the Hispanic child learned. We need to get back to understanding that our children learn differently, but are just as much or more brilliant than any other child.
They are. Yes, they are.
We try to make our children learn everything but the way that they learn. Learn every way, but the way that they learn. So we want them to learn the European way, we want them to learn the Hispanic way, we want them to learn the Asian way. What about what's their way? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then when they can't learn these other ways because they're not who they are from a makeup standpoint, you understand? They're not who they are spiritually, they're not who they are even from an intellectual makeup of how we learn. Now when you throw all these other different ways at them, now their attention is not there.
That's right. And you want to label them.
So now all of those other things factor in.
Exactly.
Now you got a teacher saying your child cannot learn because he can't learn the European way or he can't learn the Asian way. You understand what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So now you open up a door for the system to stigmatize your child and to create a mindset, to create a complex, to create a mental disability within your child when they actually have none.
None.
You understand what I'm saying?
They want to put all these alphabets on these children, saying that they can't look. Little Johnny can't sit still. Little Johnny doesn't pay attention. Well, maybe little Johnny is bored. Maybe little Johnny may know just as much as you do that's trying to teach you.
Absolutely.
And you just can't, that's a form of labeling children. And Brian, we have that discussion another day. Yeah. But we do want to thank you all, everybody that came on tonight. Thank you.
Absolutely.
We really appreciate that. But before we go, I do want to chime and throw this out. There are athletes that are very well educated. And to bring up the Deion Sanders, just a smidgen.
We don't need to bring that up.
Yes, we do.
No, we don't. We don't need to bring that up. We need to. After hour, we'll talk about that another time.
We'll talk about it. But anyway, his children they may be athletes, but they're very intelligent. And I just
You don't know that.
Yes, I do.
No, you
Look
don't.
at
All
this.
you know is what you see on TikTok.
Well,
You don't know that. You don't know nothing about that man's children. All you know is he got them a free ride to school because of who he is. Period. That's it. You've never seen any ACT. You haven't seen the ACT scores. You've never heard him talk about the ACT scores. You've never heard him mention a GPA on his children. So how in the world do you know that they're intelligent kids? Only thing you know is they can throw a football and intercept a football.
He got
And they got I don't care. That don't mean anything.
Yes, it does.
No, that doesn't mean a thing. Doesn't mean a thing. I got a granddaughter that I sat at a keyboard and she started playing the keyboard, never took a lesson in her life. But what does that mean? She's 5 years old. I sat her down, she just started playing.
Okay, Brian.
Okay, so
Okay.
point proved.
I love to get him started. I can do that.
We'll talk about Dion though. We got to talk about Dion.
We do.
I'm going to let everybody get their stuff that they say out the way, and then I'm going to break it down for you all to know exactly what's going on with Dion.
Can we do that next Sunday, Brian? Because I know you've been researching. I know you know.
Oh, you know, I told you before he left what was going to happen, and I told you that he was not, his interest has never been Jackson State. I told you that when he went there. 2.5 years ago, I was saying this. Nobody, oh, Brian, you hating on it. Okay.
I still say that. I agree to this day.
So
I agree to this day.
let me tell you, Faith family, I said this when he went. When he went, so we'll have a conversation about that next week. We'll break that down. See, this has got to be about, I'll say this and we're going to end. This has got to be about the whole community. It cannot, if we're going to come up as a people, it cannot be individualized. See, that's what slavery did for us. That's part of what slavery did to us, I'm sorry. It individualized us. It picked the haves and the have-nots. It really did. It created a caste system where it picked and chose those that would make it and those that would not. It picked and chose those that it would allow to get a piece of the pie and those that it said you got to make the pie. And it's still doing it today. So, on that
But
note,
those people work hard.
on that note, we'll end.
He worked very hard. Okay. Thank y'all for watching the show today. We love you guys. We just have to have a little fun too. You know, everything can't be so serious.
Yeah.
But we love
Peace
you guys. Thank you.
And power.